Hello students and welcome to the lecture. So students, we are going to talk about the salient features of the Indian Constitution in this lecture, and this is you can say very important topic for competitive exams. All right. Before starting this topic, let me tell you several things which you are already known, but these things are basically for the build up, or you can say the initial build up before starting the actual you can say the lecture. So basically, when we talk about India, then we know that India is a democracy, right? India is a democracy, and we could say that India is the world's largest democracy, right? India is the world's largest democracy. And what do you mean by democracy? First thing is that, like, what do we understand by the democracy? Then, basically, when we talk about the democracy, then the first significance is that we have the elected government. It means that the people of our country having the right to select the people, or you can say to elect the people who will govern their country for a specific period of time. In India, basically, we have the 5 years. Thereafter, there is a responsible government. All right. Responsible government means whatever the government will be elected, the government is directly responsible towards the people who had elected them. All right. But apart from all these things, the main thing is that the country, which is said to be the democratic country, must having the constitution. Constitution, you could say that the constitution is the main mechanism on which the democracy works. Okay, it is the main mechanism on which the democracy works. All right, so this is the scenario. So when we talk about India, and we said that the India is a democracy or the world's largest democracy, so we know that we have the elected government, we have the responsible government, even we have the constitution. Okay, so if we have the constitution, then what are the features of our constitution which makes us the world's largest democracy? All right, so to understanding all these features, basically we have started the discussion over the salient features of the Indian constitution. All right, it means the constitution what we have in India, what are the features and what are the you can say provisions in it. So basically in this session we will discuss about the introduction, thereafter the salient features of the constitution, then what is the criticism of constitution, because everything having some pros and cons. Okay, or you can say everything having some advantages and disadvantages. So if we praise our constitution, definitely we have to look at the criticism also. Thereafter, what do you mean by the schedules and what are the schedules of the constitution? All right, and you could say that what are the sources of constitution. Okay, like constitution is like some governing book, the book by which we govern our country. All right, so what were the sources by using of them we had make our constitution? So these are the topics we are going to discuss, like starting with the introduction, salient features of constitution, criticism of constitution, schedules of constitution at glance, and the sources of the constitution at a glance. So let's first starting with the introduction part. The Indian constitution is unique in its contents and spirit. The first thing, though borrowed from almost every constitution of the world, the Constitution of India has several salient features that distinguish from the constitution of the other countries. So basically, when we talk about the beginning, or you can say starting of the journey of the Constitution of India, then basically we had started it from the year of 1946. That was the year when the when the Constituent Assembly was formed. Okay, when the Constituent Assembly was formed, and the primary role of the Constituent Assembly is to designing the constitution for the newly independent country. Because as we know that on 15th August 1947, India had become the independent country from the Great Britain, right? Or you can say that the Great Britain, which had acquired our country for almost 200 years, all right, we had got the independence from them on 15th August 1947. Got it? That's the idea. So basically, before 1 year of this 1947, in 1946, we had the Constituent Assembly. Got it? And what was the role of Constituent Assembly? The Constituent Assembly role was to make the constitution for newly independent India. Okay. So remember, on that time, basically when we were searching for the sources through which we had made our constitution, so we had borrowed various provisions from, you can say, various constitutions of the world. All right. So you could say that the Indian constitution is a borrowed constitution. Indian constitution is a borrowed constitution, but still we have the several salient features that distinguish it from the constitution of the other countries. It means that we had make some modifications also. Got it? It should be noted at the outset that a number of original features of the constitution, okay, as we had adapted it on 1949. So basically you could say that on 9 December 1946, first meeting of Constituent Assembly was held. All right. Thereafter, on 13 December 1946, objectives and resolutions were presented. All right. Thereafter, on 26 November 1949, Constitution was adopted. Okay. Thereafter, on 24th January 1950, Constitution was signed. Okay. And finally, that was the date of 26 January 1950, when the Constitution was implemented. Okay. So that is the timeline. On 9 December 1946, first meeting of Constituent Assembly was held. On 13 December 1946, Objectives and solutions were presented. On 26 November 1949, Constitution was adopted. On 24 January 1950, Constitution was signed, and on 26 January 1950, the Constitution was implemented. So that is the important timeline. Got it? So basically, this is significance. This is the significance what I had told you right now. Most of the people thought that on 26 January 1950 the Constitution was adopted. No, because the Constitution was adopted on 26 November 1949. On 24 January 1950, the Constitution was signed by all the members of the Constituent Assembly. All right. And finally, on 26 January 1950, the Constitution was implemented, which is famously known as the Republic Day. Right? So, remember these details. All right. So, basically, after adoption in 1949, it had undergone a substantial changes. Okay, it means the amendments, particularly like 7th Amendment, 42nd Amendment, 44th Amendment, 73rd Amendment, 74th Amendment, 97th Amendment, and 101 amendments. So basically, you could say, like when we were making the Constitution of India, all right, our constitutional makers, who were the part of the Constituent Assembly, they had decided one thing, that the Indian Constitution, the Indian Constitution must have the space for further development and modification. Okay, because remember, the you can say the country, the governance, and the environment is dynamic, not static. It means that the things are undergoing changes on the continuous or on the regular basis. There is no fixation. Like if the thing is there, then the thing is fixed. Nothing like that. The thing is undergone many changes. All right. So similar things are here. All right. So that's why the constitution makers of our country, when they were making the constitution, they had kept this thing in their mind. Like we must give some scope for the further development and the modifications which will be occur in future. All right. And that we called as an amendment. This development and changing in the constitution, or you can say the modification, is known as the amendment. All right. So basically, we had seen several amendments so far, like the 7th Amendment, 42nd Amendment, 44th Amendment, 73rd Amendment, 74th Amendment, 97th Amendment, and 101st Amendment. All right. Or you can say, in fact, the 42nd Amendment, 1976. This amendment is oftenly known as the mini constitution. Why? Because it having the large number of changes which had been made to the various part of the constitution. Okay, so that's why it is known as the mini constitution. And what were the changes we will see in the further course. All right. However, in Keshav Nanda Bharti case 1973, the Supreme Court ruled out that the constituent power of the parliament under Article 368 does not enable it to alter the basic structure of the constitution. So basically, what do we mean by this? All right, is that as I have told you, like if we wanted to make the changes in the constitution, so we have to do the amendments. All right. And the article of the constitution which empowers us to make the amendments is comes from article 368. All right. It means that the article 368 gives power to the Parliament of India to make the changes into the constitution. Okay. Or you can say to further develop or modify the constitution. But there is a very famous case in the Keshavanda Bharati case, 1973, all right, which states that the Supreme Court ruled out that, however, the Article 368 allows the Parliament to make the amendments into the Constitution. But no such amendment could be enforced if the amendment hurts the basic structure of the Constitution. Or the basic structure is oftenly, you can say, the mention in the preamble. About it also we will learn in the further course. Okay. So the salient features of the constitution today, the lengthiest written constitution in the world. Constitutions are classified into written like the American Constitution, unwritten like the British Constitution. All right. So basically when we talk about the written constitution and unwritten constitution, then basically the written constitutions having restrictions on exercising powers of, or you can say by, Parliament. Whereas in unwritten constitutions, no such restrictions on exercising powers by Parliament. Okay. Here is a rule by book or constitution. Here is rule based on discretion of the Parliament. Okay. Like when we talk about the written constitution, everything is written down. Okay. So that's why there is a restrictions, because there is a rule by law. Parliament could not exercise any power out of the book, or you can say out of the powers which had been granted to the Parliament through the constitution, which is in the written form. But when we talk about the similar thing about the unwritten constitution, so there is no such restrictions on exercising powers by the Parliament. Why? Because there is the rule which is based on the discretion of the Parliament. All right. The rule is not based as per the book or the constitution. So you could say the Parliament having the, you can say autonomy, or you can say having the freedom to do the things out of the scope. All right. So the best example of the written constitution is the American Constitution, which is in the written form, and unwritten constitution is the British Constitution. Okay. But when we talk about India, then we go with the American type. It means that we having the written constitution. The Constitution of India is the lengthiest of all the written constitutions of the world. It is a very comprehensive, elaborated, and detailed document that makes it the lengthiest written constitution in the entire world. Originally, in 1949, when the constitution was adopted, it had the preamble. What do you mean by preamble? We will see in the further course. 395 articles, which were divided into 22 parts and total 8 schedules. Presently, in 2019, right now, you could say that it consists of preamble, 470 articles, which were divided into 22 5 parts, and total we have the 12 schedule. What do you mean by this? It means that the scope of parliament has been for scope of constitution, not parliament. Scope of constitution has been increased. The scope of constitution has been increased. All right, that is the thing. The various amendments carried out since 1951 have deleted about 20 articles and one part, which is the part 7, and added about 95 articles and 4 part like 4th A, 9th A, 9th B, and 14th A, and 4 schedules like 9, 10, 11, and 12. All right. So you could say, however, in this further course, some articles had been deleted along with some part, but more articles have been added along with more parts and 4 new schedules. All right. So we could say that scope of constitution has been increased, not decreased, because the deletion number is much lower in comparison with the upgradation number. All right. No other constitution in the world has so many articles and schedules. 4 factors have contributed to the elephantine size. Elephantines here basically signifies the elephantine basically here signifies the large number or the huge size or large size of our constitution. Okay, so what were the factors due to which we had to make this huge of the constitution? First is the geographical factors, that is vastness of the country and its diversity. We know that India is the 7th largest country in the world, territorial wise. All right. So the country is vast. About diversity, when we talk about, then we know India is the world's largest diverse nation in terms of culture and religion. No other country in this entire world is as much diverse as India is in terms of culture and the religions. Okay, due to which we have to make several provisions for each and everyone. That's why the constitution got enlarged. Thereafter, the historical factors like the influence of the Government of India Act 1935, which was bulky. Okay, because as we know that when we were talking about the historical background of the Indian constitution, so what we had discussed that when the Indian Independence Act 1947 was passed, so there was a provision like Constituent Assembly was already appointed in 1946 and was tasked to design the constitution for newly independent India. But till the Constituent Assembly will formulate a constitution, all right, the Government of India Act 1935 was prescribed to be implemented. Got it? That was the thing. Like, till the Constituent Assembly will design the new constitution for India, till then the Government of India Act 1935 was supposed to be implemented throughout the country. All right. And when we designed our constitution, so basically there were several provisions which we had directly copy paste in a constitution from the Government of India Act. All right. And as we know that the Government of India Act was bulky, so that's why ultimately our constitution got bulkness. Thereafter, single constitution for both the center and the state. Like when we talk about India, then we know that India having divisions of government. Like in India, we have the three-tier government. All right. Central level government. Okay. State level government and local or regional level government. So we had the three type of government: central level, state level, and the local or the regional level. All right. So basically, we could say that we have the division of the government. But one thing which made us unique is that all levels of governments are functioning by the single constitution. It means that there is only the single constitution which governs all the level of government, whether it's a central level, state level, local or regional level. It means that we do not have different type of constitution for different level of governments. Only the one constitution is there which governs all the level. All right. That's why also, because we have to consider the all the levels into the one single form, so that's why we have the lengthiest written constitution in the world. Thereafter, dominance of legal luminaries and the Constituent Assembly. The Constitution contains not only the fundamental principle of governance, but also detailed administrative provisions. Okay, basically, you could say when we were making the Indian Constitution, all right, most of the members of the Constituent Assemblies were belong to the legal background. By virtue of this, the provisions are in the very, very detailed form and very explanatory form. Okay, that's why the length of the constitution has increased. All right, constitution contains not only the fundamental principles of governance, but also the detailed administrative provisions. Further, those matters which in other modern democratic countries have been left to the ordinary legislation or established political conventions have also been included into the constitutional document itself in India. All right, like you could say, the modern democratic countries which had left the topic for the ordinary legalization, or you can say established political convention, or you can say on the discretion of legal force, or you can say not legal force, but on the state, on the discretion of the state. Those matters have also been included into the constitutional document itself in India. It means that no discretion is there. The topics must be implemented as per the constitutional behavior. So that's why also the length of the constitution got enlarged. All right. Thereafter, drawn from various sources, as we know, The Constitution of India has borrowed most of its provision from the constitutions of various other countries, as I have told you, and the Government of India Act 1935, which was supposed to be continued till the new constitution was made. Dr. B.R. Ambedkar, who was a drafter of the constitution, proudly acclaimed that the Constitution of India has been framed after the ransacking all the known constitution of the world. It means that we have searched all the provisions of all the constitution. We had taken over all the good things, good deeds, then we made our constitution. All right. The structural part of the constitution is to a large extent right from the Government of India Act 1935, which was to be the backbone of the constitution. Why? Because that was the continuation form of the rules and regulations till the constitution arrived. The philosophical part of the constitution, like the fundamental rights, the directive principle of the state policy, they derive their inspiration from the American and Irish constitution respectively. When we will talking about the source of constitutions, then we will look at them also. All right. The political part of constitution, like the principle of cabinet government and the relations between the executive and the legislatures, have been largely drawn from the British Constitution. Why? Because as I had told you, when the Britishers were ruling in India, there were many things they had implemented in our country. All right. And the things we had continued from here, but we had done some little bit modification as per the requirement of our country. The other provisions of the Constitution have been drawn from the Constitution of Canada, Australia, Germany, USSR, now it's known as the Russia, France, South Africa, Japan, and so on. The most profound influence and the material source of the Constitution is the Government of India Act 1935, which I had already told you. The federal scheme, judiciary, the governors, emergency powers, the Public Service Commission, and most of the administration details are drawn from the Government of India Act 1935. More than half of the provisions of Constitution are identical to or bear a close resemblance to the Act of 1935. All right. So students, basically in this lecture, we have finished till here. In the next lecture, we will continue from here. Till then, just revise all the facts and figures we have discussed in this lecture. Be ready for the another lecture. With this note, let's end this lecture, and what we say. Thank you.